let's go ahead and start. I'm going to do 3 things for you today, unless y'all have some questions on some other stuff. Yesterday when I did the class online, and then when I did another class online last night, I was through in about 25 minutes, and both of them then had about 30 minutes of questions. So we may be out of here real quickly today, but we're a week ahead at this point, because this is what would have been Wednesday after break. Okay. I do have the test open out there for you, at least as far as I know I do, in Cisco, for Chapter 9, and Chapter 8 sitting there open. So 9 should be 2. Didn't y'all say there was a problem on 8?
Last week it wasn't.
But what is working now, right? Or you don't know?
Last time I looked at it, it wasn't, but that was like Wednesday or...
Okay, because I don't think I looked at it the other afternoon, so I will look at it after class today. Because for some reason I think I forgot about that then.
I don't think it was open.
8's not open? All right. Or I activated it the other morning, I don't remember. In any event, I don't remember looking at it at all in the afternoon the other day. Okay? So I'll check it after class. I'll make sure 8 and 9 are both open. All right, now we're looking at TCP.
It's open.
It is open? Okay, good. I think I did it during class. Now I'm thinking further on it. I think we just stopped right there and I did it at that point, which is why I wouldn't have done it in the afternoon. And I'm remembering, just seems like in my mind when I was thinking that I didn't remember touching any of that afternoon. The assignments and everything should be out there for the rest of the semester, and such on that. And then the last week we'll just meet on that Monday, but not on that Wednesday. Okay, although I'll be here that Wednesday morning, probably. I'll see on that Monday if I need to be here or not. But I'm going to have to leave by 10:30 or so that morning. So I may not come to this campus. I'll see what y'all tell me on that Monday. If you need me here, that I can meet people here earlier, if anybody's still needing to get the cabling done. If you did not get the midterm one done, remember you got to get with me before that week. Preferably much sooner to get it finished, because you cannot do both the final lab and the midterm lab on the same day. Okay? Now, the 3-way handshake, which they really don't name it as that. They tell you that it's established in 3 steps. But if you look at other books and read out there on stuff or whatever, and I've seen it on certification tests and stuff, specifically call it the 3-way handshake. And other books have called it 3-way handshake. But this one just says about the TCP connection establishment, and that it's established in 3 steps. But they don't use that particular term. However, you'll see that term used a lot of times, so be aware of that, okay? That's what people know of. The establishment of a conversation in TCP is a 3-way handshake. Okay? It's not different than you making a phone call, actually. Because if you make a phone call, that if I go to call somebody, I'm going to go through, me and that person's going to go through the same 3 steps that we're talking about here. So that step 1 is when I would call the number, okay, and call them, and that it rings to them. So I have sent a signal to them telling them I want to establish a conversation, okay. Haven't said anything to them at that point, but I have made a call to them. Everybody follow on that? And the phone rings. When they answer it, two things are going to happen right there. One is that there's going to be a sync back to me telling me that they've answered it. The phone quits ringing. Okay? So you know somebody's answered at that point, right? Might not hear their voice yet or not, and sometimes we never hear their voice. But we know we've made contact to them. So we get a signal back to us telling us, it's really not a signal back to us telling us that, but it's the fact we don't get any signal any longer of the phone ringing. So we know somebody has answered on the thing at that point. Okay? They are going to tell us hello at that point, or whatever their greeting is, correct? That if I call one of y'all in here, that when you pick up the phone, you're going to tell me hello or something. Or you're going to look at it and go, I don't like him at all, and maybe make some other comment. But you're going to give some type of greeting at that point, correct? So that, at that point, is when you're syncing back to me, saying, all right, I'm here. I'm going to, in turn, tell you hello back, and that we've established a conversation at that point. But notice it went through 3 steps. I made a call, you did a hello, and I did a hello. And then our conversation starts, right? But to get the conversation established, our call established, we did 3 steps to do it. Does that make sense to everybody? The 3-way handshake is literally going to work the same way on it. Okay? And machine A, machine B is just whichever machine is contacting the other one, that there's information to be sent between the 2 machines. Okay? A is the one it's starting from, B is the one that it's calling to. When we look at finishing it, A and B can be reversed. Okay? A could be either one of the machines, and B is the other machine. Y'all follow on that? So the one that starts the conversation, that places it there, does not have to be the one that goes to terminate the conversation. Does that make sense to y'all? Likewise, if I call you on a phone call, it's not me that's got to say bye first. It may be you or it may be me. Okay? But Jonathan may decide that's all he wants to hear from me, and so he says bye. Okay? He's trying to be nice to me instead of just hanging up the phone on me. Right? And then I'll say bye back to him, and then at that point we both hang up. Y'all follow on that? But either one of us could go, all right, this conversation's gone on long enough, and we're going to end it at this point. And so either one of us could say bye, but it doesn't have to be the one that established the call. The same thing's working on the computer on it. So on the 3-way handshake, the first machine that's needing to send stuff is going to send a sync signal to the other machine. Because with TCP, remember, it's connection oriented, so we have to establish a connection. So A sends a sync to B. It's saying, I want to synchronize with you, okay? And it will have a sequence number on it, which is just a random number that's chosen by that machine. And your examples almost always, in whatever book you're looking at, is almost always used as 100 in the pictures, okay? But in real life, it's a random number, okay? Because it's going to use a different set of numbers for its different conversations. And remember, it could be establishing conversations at the same time with several different machines. Because your computer can multitask, right? So it sends a sync with a sequence number on there of 100. Okay? B gets that sync. Because if B doesn't get the sync, then you never made contact with the other one. Okay? That's where if we make phone call that we start getting that funny beeping sound that tells us the number is not reachable, whatever. Okay? So B receives the sync, and B sends back a sync with an acknowledgement. Okay? On it. Now, when it sends that back, the acknowledgement that it sends back the sync sequence number that A sent plus 1. That's how machine A now knows this is coming from which machine. Okay? So A sent 100, B sends back an acknowledgement of 101. The 101 is telling us this is actually an acknowledgement for a number 1 less, which was 100, which is what the sequence number was A sent. Does everybody follow on that? B also puts on there its own sequence number and starts a sequence too, because they're going to use these sequence numbers from there on as they send stuff back and forth. A is going to keep adding to their sequence number every time it sends something across. B is going to keep adding to their sequence number when it sends something to A. So it's a random number also. 300 is what I've seen used a lot of times, which is what's used in the book, is the illustration. But it's a random number in real life. Does everybody follow on that? So now A is using 100. B is using 300. Does that make sense? And that's just their base where they're starting from. And every time A goes to send something, it's going to up that number. B is going to up that number when it responds to that, but when it sends things, it's going to use its 300 series. So A receives the sync and the acknowledgement. Now that is actually 2 messages. Okay? The acknowledgement was 1 packet that comes across. And so the illustration here in the book isn't shown like it usually is. Usually from going in step 2, they show you 2 lines going back from B to A. One of them is the acknowledgement, one of them is the sync from B. Does that make sense? Because B is made the connection, so it's sending back an acknowledgement, it's received the call, but it is doing its own sending sync, which is when on the telephone call you go hello. Okay? Because the call did connect, and then there's a hello from you of you want to start the conversation with me. A gets both of those, and then A sends back another one that it sends an acknowledgement back that now has a sequence on it of 101, its next number, and it sends back an acknowledgement of 301, which tells B that this was a response to its sync. At that point, both machines have talked with each other and established they're both there. On the phone call, we both had said hello by that point. So I've connected through to you. You said hello. I've said hello back, and so we both are on the line at that point. Okay? Now, if we were chief executives of some big companies, the 3-way handshake gets a little bit longer, because what really happens is our secretaries make the call, and then they pass it off to us once they both establish the call. And then they transfer the call to us. Does that make sense? And then we go ahead and start talking. To finish it, it's just a 2-step process. It's simple. Whichever machine says that's all of it is going to send a FIN signal, a finish signal. It says, I'm finished. Or in our telephone conversation, you say bye. Bye is the finished signal. Because if he says bye to me, he's telling me, as far as I know, we're done with this conversation. Okay? And then I'm going to acknowledge that I agree, we're done with the conversation. I'm going to say bye back to him. And at that point, we receive the two acknowledgments and we disconnect. Okay? So A is going to send a finish. B is going to acknowledge it and send a finish. And in this case, they actually give you the two lines. And then A is going to do the acknowledge back on it, though we both said bye, and at that point the acknowledge goes back that the bye was received. That we really don't say anything on telephone conversation. Then we just take our action and disconnect. So now, once the acknowledgement comes back that it was received on the other end, that they both just disconnect at that point. So you're going through all those steps to do it. To disconnect it, it's just a finish, an acknowledgement, and a finish, and an acknowledgement. Okay? But to establish it, we did a sync, we did an acknowledge and a sync, then we did an acknowledge back, and establish our conversation. Okay? But each time it ups the number. Okay? Because acknowledgments are always one bigger than the message, the sequence number on the message they're responding to. And when you send the next sequence, the next one, you always up your sequence number by 1 from where it was. Okay? From where you last sent. And that's how you keep track of. The machine knows what it's coming back in response to. It's going to use those numbers to build it. And both ends build their own sequence number. And in both cases, they're actually a random number generated. So they're not using the same numbers to work from. Okay? But they both randomly generated a base number to work from. All right. Questions on starting a conversation and ending a conversation? All right, the next one they talk to you about, and they actually do call it the three-way handshake when we get on over to 41. Yeah. Okay. The next part to talk about is how are we going to send that data across there? Okay. Now, this is involving flow control, because we're controlling how our data is flowing between the two machines. Remember, on TCP, we want to make sure everything gets there. So we're not going to just send it packet after packet after packet, or actually segment after segment after segment on this layer. Okay? We're going to send it in smaller groups and get acknowledgments on that. And that's going to be windowing. Windowing says we're sending that big thing of data we're going to send, all of those segments. But instead of this whole big thing, we're just going to send a small group, a small group, a small group, a small group across. Y'all follow on that? Each of those, when we're moving, is a window. Find her marker. So when we go to send, we're going to send first so many segments. We're going to get a response back that machine B received it. And then we'll send the next set of segments. When B says, I've received that, we'll send the next set of segments until we send it. Each one of these is a window. However, it will vary as we go. The very first thing that will occur is the two machines will agree on the window size. So now machine A will send to machine B of, here's the window size I want to use. Because what it does is it figures out based on how fast of a connection, etc. we've got there, and that's based on the response time it took as it did that three-way handshake. It determines how much information can it send across in a certain amount of time. Okay, so how many segments can it really reasonably send and that it wants a response to before it sends the next number of segments. Illustrations quite often use 3 as the window size. Okay, but that's just for illustration purpose. In real life, it's going to be different numbers. Okay, so machine A sends to B and says, I'm going to send it to you in window sizes of 3. Machine B looks at that when it gets it, and it knows how the connection is working for it, and it also knows what's the biggest window it can handle. That's the other part both machines are looking at too. So machine A may have said, I'm going to send it to you in 10. My window size is going to be 10. Machine B may say, whoa, I don't have much memory on my network card here. Don't send me 10 at a time. Only send me 5. And machine A will agree to that. Okay? But they're going to reach an agreement on what size the window should be. Then machine A sends the 3 of them. 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Machine B gets it. If all 3 windows, if all 3 segments, all 3 segments arrive, so A sent 3, B, if it got all 3 of them, it will send back 4. It's not sending back 4 segments, it's just sending the number 4. What that's telling A is, send the next part starting with number 4. I got through 3. Because it sends 1 bigger than whatever the last segment it got was. Does that make sense? So it's telling A, start it from here. A will then send, so here it sent 1, 2, and 3. B responded with 4. A now sends 4, 5, and 6. And we had a problem. 4 and 6 gets to B. What's B going to send back now? What does it need to, where does it need to start, A to start sending from? What number? If they'd all gotten there, it would have been 7. But they didn't all get there, so what number is it going to send back and tell A?
8. It didn't get all sent.
It got 4 and 6. It's going to respond with 5. Because it got through 4, so it's ready to start receiving from 5. Now it did receive 6, but since it didn't get 5, 6 is worthless to it. It's got to have them all in sequence. Does y'all follow? Y'all follow on that? So that means A is now going to send 5, 6, and 7. Okay? It had to send 6 twice good. Okay? Because it had to send 5 twice to get a good one through. Does that make sense to y'all? Okay? If B never responded, so A sent this, and B no response, and remember it knows how long a period of time to wait, and if it doesn't get a response in that period of time, the assumption is they got lost somewhere out there in the ether. Okay? It's going to proceed to resend 4, 5, and 6. Okay? Because it assumes everything that's sent there, who knows where it went. Because if B had have gotten anything, it would have responded back of start again with 4, start with 5, start with 6, or start with 7. Okay? If B just got a little clump of stuff but didn't get sufficient of anything, it would send back a message, start me again with 4. Okay? If 4 got there, but 5 and 6 didn't get there, it'd send back obviously 5, or whichever on that. Or if all of them got there, it'd send back a 7. Okay? It keeps doing that through there until it gets the whole thing sent. Y'all follow on that? So we're gradually moving from one to the next, but in this case, where we had to resend 5, 6, and 7, our window actually changed to here the next time. Okay? Think about the windows like when you're sitting in the car looking out, driving down the road. Okay? What you see keeps changing, right? You're seeing more of the scenery by the road as you go by. If you've ever ridden on a train and sat beside another train car, you can really picture it because it goes really crazy on that. Apparently you've ridden a train. You nodded like you knew what I was talking about there. Huh?
A long time ago I did.
But you know how you really get some weird effect on that one. Windowing really takes place on that. But think in the car of if you're looking out the side window, it keeps changing what you're seeing continuously as you go down the road. And if we're stopped at the red light, you just keep seeing the same thing again and again until you go to moving, right? So the same thing keeps getting sent again because it didn't get there, right? But you were supposed to be seeing the next part, but we're stuck there, either at red light or we're stuck in the traffic jam. I had lots of luck with that last week. Or lack of luck with that last week. Because you're not lucky to get stuck in traffic. But you're doing a window of it at a time. Y'all see why it's called windowing? But it's not got anything to do with Microsoft Windows, okay? Other than Microsoft Windows is named Windows because you're only seeing parts of what's on the computer and running as you look at each part of it. That you're looking at windows into the memory is what you're looking at on your desktop, okay? When you're looking at your screen, you're seeing stuff in the memory, but you're only seeing parts of what's in the memory. And that you can flash around to different windows. So there, on Microsoft Windows, you're in a nice big mansion. This case, you're just in the single car with just the one window beside it that you can look out. Okay? But you will see, now the other part that does occur in there, they agreed when they started that they were going to have a window at 3 segments at a time. As they're sending on that and receiving, that if that's all getting there quickly and no problems, that the two of them may pause and say, wait a minute, how about if we go up to this size window instead? Because the bigger window you can send, the faster you can get the information across. Just think about it. If we are having this conversation in here, this lecture, and that I need you to tell me after I say each word that you've received it, it's going to take us a while to get the conversation done, right? But if I just need you to reply to me that you've heard what I'm telling you after every 50 words, we'll go a whole lot faster on getting through what we want to say, correct? So that's all that windowing is. In a normal conversation, you're doing windowing also. Because if you and I go to talk to each other, or you and I go to talk to each other, when you go to tell me something, you're going to tell me as much as you think I can handle before I need to respond to you and let you know that I've heard all of what you're telling me. Now, it may not be in that real conversation, may not be me literally saying, I heard you, yes, something else, it may be a nod of the head. That or a blink of my eyes or whatever, but you've seen something on me that tells you I've heard what you're saying. Just like when I'm standing here talking to y'all. Y'all are giving me acknowledgments at different points on what I'm saying. And that if y'all all of a sudden we all start staring off into blank space, all pick up your phones and start sitting there texting on it, or whatever, that you're absolutely not paying any attention to me, then I'm getting that no acknowledgement back and that I need to resend the information. And in the case of this, I need to send it differently to you. Right? So there is, in human life, we're doing the same type of thing, but just keep in mind it's not always verbal communications, it's nonverbal also. Because you may go that you don't want to hear any more of it, so you turn around and walk off. Or if we're talking, that you may literally tell me to slow down at times. Because you've all done that to somebody at some point. When I was talking with one of the instructors at Atlanta Tech last week, he's from Nigeria, I think it is, because there's several of them from Nigeria there, and he's got that real thick British Nigerian accent. And I have to slow my thinking down while I'm listening to him to catch what all he's saying. Because if I don't, I won't fully understand him. There's nothing wrong with his English, whatever, okay? It's just that's the accent he's got on him. And y'all have all talked with similar people at different times. There's a lot of instructors have a hard time understanding him because of that, and that they can't shift themselves on their thinking on it, listening to him. And to a degree, that's changing my window size. Because if I'm using my window size with the 6 of y'all, I'm going for a larger window size for y'all. Of making sure I hear things carefully that's coming in from each of you. Because I can, y'all, and that y'all's voice sounds similar to my voice. Okay? Our way of speaking is very similar. And that we're all speaking Southern English. Mine's a little bit variation of it because I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, so I've sort of got an international Southern English. But I've been in the South for 35 years now, or 40 years now. So I've gotten more of the dialect of the South mixed in there, but growing up, I heard a little of everything. So when I listen to him, I have to shift downward to understand on him, and I do fine with it anyway. Others going, whoa, what in the world did he just say? Okay? And I'm sure he has to do the same thing. That when he's listening to me or to the others, that there's a somewhat shift on that from what he grew up always hearing everybody else saying there when he was in Nigeria. And them all speaking their Nigerian British English. Okay? And that when the other instructor there at the school that speaks the Nigerian British English, that when that one goes to speak, that I'm sure they can both, that if I was to be sitting there listening to them, they would speak much faster to each other than they speak to me or to others. Does that make sense? Y'all follow on it? So on the computer, we're doing the same thing. In this case, it's with the TCP windowing. We're establishing a window size, and we start sending it in that. But it could be everything is getting there, and we'll stop, and it actually does stop after a while if there's no errors occurred, and goes, let's increase this window size if possible. But we may be already up to the maximum window size one of the 2 machines can handle. Okay? In which case it won't change. The other one is, it could be this. A bunch of that occurring. That we keep losing segments and having to be resent. If that happens, the same thing happens. It's going to stop and go, whoa, we're losing a lot of information here. let's slow it down. Let's shrink our window size and send less each time in sending acknowledgement back. And that will actually speed up what we're sending across then, because if we can send less and it all gets there each time, yeah, we got more acknowledgements in there, but we're not having to resend stuff, so the process gets a little bit faster on it then. Does that follow to everybody? So there will be, once it establishes a window size at the beginning, that's not the window size it necessarily's got when it finishes sending the whole set of data. And mind you, this could be really large, because if we're sending some big picture file, that 50 meg picture, or 120 meg, I think you said we could actually get the camera for $2,000 or $6,000 or something the other day. I'll let one of you buy one and bring and give it to me as a gift, or let me play with it for a little bit. Notice who I didn't say about buying it. Me. I'll stay with the cheaper end of the Canons of the $400 ones. I've got to find a little piece of fine grained sandpaper to fix mine, I think. But my contacts apparently have gotten dirty between the lens and the body. So I scraped them a little bit with something the other day, and it went to working for a little bit and then quit a few hours later. So I really think I gotta get some little piece of fine, and I thought if I had a piece of fine grit sandpaper and sand on, there's about 8 little contacts in there between the lens and the body. And it keeps telling me that's where the problem is, that it's got losing communication between the two and to clean the contacts. Well, when I had tried wiping them off, erasing them, that didn't make much difference. But then when I took a piece of metal to it and scraped on them, lo and behold, it worked for an hour or so. So I really think if a piece of sandpaper, I'll be in good shape using a fine grit one. Like you get for doing your lens cleaning on your car and stuff, that real fine sand on it. Because I want something that's just, I don't want to grind down the little contacts, I just want to rough them up. But you're going to be changing on that, but that's how you send it across. All right, questions on the windowing? Does that make sense to y'all? Usually, with most people, including myself, but when you look at it like they show it to you in the book, and I don't even know where they got it illustrated. Right now I'm not even seeing it. There's the window size acknowledgements. So their illustration does not show it very well at all, because this one's much more limited. Of their 2 illustrations on 486 and 487, usually they've got it more illustrated, more like this, where they're showing you a square box of here's what's sent, here's the acknowledgement back, here's what we didn't send, and so on across. Okay? But they cut it real short here. But bear in mind, you may be sending exceedingly large files across, okay? So maybe that picture file, where I got onto the camera there for a second, that if we're sending that 50 meg picture across, or even that 10 meg picture from our phone or our camera we got now, because after all, those phones can, in some cases, do 10 meg and 15 meg pictures. You just don't have the lens on them. That's a big file. And you don't want it to lose any bits when it sends it across. Because then that may mean that instead of him having whatever brown eyes, that he may have yellow-green eyes. That it looks like he's been around too close to the nuclear plant too long. Okay? And that his eyes are now radiating. We don't want that to happen, right? We want his eyes to stay brown. Does that make sense? So you really don't want bits getting lost. So you really want to transfer that picture probably using TCP. Now if it's one that you're not real worried about, and a lot of times when we're transferring them off our phone, that there you're not usually as big a quality concern on it, it may not go on TCP. But if you're uploading it to Shutterfly or someplace else like that, or to Flickr or at Google, I think Google's is Flickr, or is that Yahoo's? I don't remember. No, Google is Picasso. Flickr is Yahoo. And Flickr's been shut down, if I remember right. Just like Google shutting down Google Plus. I think it's gone now at the end of this week. Because nobody ever went to using Google Plus. And they thought that was going to knock off Facebook. But Facebook seems rather safe. Facebook can commit all kinds of sins and nobody worries about it. They keep losing our information, it's getting hacked right and left, or our passwords, we're fully exposed to all their employees. Either that was the discussion this week on my other class, or it's next week's discussion. I think it's this week's discussion, does that sound right? And I think it was last week from Mr. Spurlock. If any of y'all got him. He and I we hear one thing, mention it to the other one, and ooh, that would make a good discussion. But we write them up differently, so if you get a discussion from him or a discussion from me on the same thing, what it says about it's a little bit different. So these could be massive files that you're sending across and takes a while to send across. Okay? Could be small things and that the window really doesn't make any big difference on. But if we're sending that large file across there, that large picture file, that's going to take a little bit to send it. And so you want to get on it. Now, the other part is notice what happened right here. Why you want to use UDP to do some stuff. There's a continuous response here. It's a two-way conversation. That's going to take a while to send that information. That's why voice over IP is going to go over UDP. You don't need the receiving machine to continuously be confirming it fully received what was just being said. You want it just to be sent. So that when I go to speak to you, that you get it immediate and you can speak right back to me. We're not wanting to work like on two-way radios, okay? On the ham radios and so on, where there's a delay on it. We want to get it faster, right? Because we want it in real time and be just like we're standing here talking to each other in person. When we're talking on the phone, we want it to behave the same way, to be instantaneous. Does it make sense to everybody? But other stuff, you want to make sure it all gets there and the time delay's not a factor. Okay? Questions? Because that finishes chapter 9, unless y'all got some questions for me. And we still ran almost an hour. Yeah.
Davis ran for you simply? How does this work? Well, it seems all these routers and switches right here. So how does it operate from?
Because it's going to go from here to here. Now, which router's going to go through here if we want to route it? But only this one and this one are talking to each other. It's just passing through these.
Right.
Now, it is going up and down the layers as it goes through each one of these. Because this may be the best way to go, but if this machine acts up, this may be the best way. Different path. Okay, it's going to change paths depending on what the needs are as things change. The other part is this connection may be exceedingly slow connections, and that this connection is a whole lot faster one, so it may be faster to go through there.
So it finds the fastest route.
It's going to find the fastest and shortest route.
Okay.
Okay? And the shortest route is not always the fastest route. And sometimes you got it going, and that's where you're going to get into the protocols next semester. You're going to be setting up things on it where it chooses, and you'll tell it, do you want it to choose the fastest route or the shortest route? Or how it measures it. Is it the number of hops to get there? Is it in terms of speed of each of the connections? Okay? and to measure those connections and determine get out of it. Because just like when we go to leave here, when I go to leave here and go back to the other campus, there's several different roads I can take to go from here to there, right? And depending on which way do I want to go the shortest way today, that if I know there's exceedingly traffic on that, or I know 27's doing all kinds of paving over there, just like sometime they're going to start paving out here. So they got to tear all up here still. That I may plan a little bit differently, like when I go back to Lafayette tonight, this afternoon. I'm not going to go back. I usually go across and go actually by the other campus. But tonight when I go back to Lafayette, because I know they're paving from right there above the campus down, and that they closed off a lane on southbound side, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go on down 151 and take 136 back into town. It's a few miles further, but it's going to be less time for me today on doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's all they're showing you on that one. All right, but UDP is low overhead. It does not have reliability. You have no reliability on UDP. TCP, it is highly reliable. Okay? It's guaranteed reliable because you're guaranteeing it as it goes. You know everything got there complete to the other machine. Flow control is a key word in here on transport. Okay? It only occurs on TCP. But if you see stuff about flow control, think transport layer, and particularly when they're asking you layers. That it's got a high degree of likelihood it's either the transport layer or it's going to be the session layer. Okay? And so they mentioned different ones on that to finish it up. That they tell you the TCP at the end. They tell you HTTP uses it, which I would have really thought HTTP would have used UDP, but it doesn't. FTP I already told you uses TCP. SMTP does same. That's sending your email messages, remember? And on your email messages, you don't want it losing stuff on them, do you? You want to know your full email message got to the other end. And then Telnet, they mentioned on that. And then Telnet, remember, is terminal networking. And that's actually is an abbreviation on there. I'm not sure how they got the L in there, but I can't remember. UDP, they mentioned DHCP uses it because that's just addressing your machines. It doesn't need to be a full reliable. And half of it, if you remember on THCP, is actually just broadcast to everybody, hoping something gets there. DNS the same. SNMP, which is your network management stuff. Those of you in 2601 have seen the SNMP in there along with the Nmap, working together there. TFTP, I mentioned that one the other day to you, that is a version of FTP that Cisco likes to use when their PC is directly, when they're going to their PC is directly connected to the router or switch and they're transferring FIG files across. Well, they know it's going to get there, so they use TFTP, which is trivial FTP, which is using UDP instead of TCP. Voice over IP, I told you on that one, and the IPTV, the same thing's going to go on where you're watching TV across the internet. Okay? It doesn't all have to be there. You want as fast as possible it to get to you because you want stuff to be occurring on that screen, not delays on it, because that's highly irritating to us when there's a delay on the person speaking to us or the motion picture we're watching keeps stopping and stopping and stopping. We all get mad on that real quick, right? So that's the difference on that. And then some applications, it says, will handle reliability themselves. Actually, TFTP does not worry about reliability at all. It's a fully trusting one. They're off on that one. Any questions? Then we have covered the next week of class this week. So when y'all come back for next week, which is not next week but the following week, school will be open next week. I think the library will probably be closed during the whole time, but it may be open some. I haven't seen Amy post hours for next week yet, but usually they're closed part of the time because she'll probably take some vacation during the week, and it's only her in there, so and that's the time they would like them taking vacation. So that actually does close, but the building will be open around. Administrative people will be around, because they can vacation any time of the year. Most of the faculty will not be here. I can assure you I won't be around. I have a feeling Mr. Spurlock, he'll probably be here a little bit, but he'll be in and out, and he'll probably take off a day or so. But I'm definitely taking the whole week. I've got to, if I don't take the leave, I'm going to lose leave. And when you get days paid for you not to work, you ought to take those days, right? Because if I don't take them, I'm giving that to the school. Now, actually with the way the school works on it, which the way the state works on it, is I can accumulate up to a certain amount, actually 360 hours. And if when I leave the college, retire or go get another job or whatever, they will write me a check for all of the amount of leave I have up to 360 hours. And y'all can figure out real quick, that's a decent sized check I'll get having 360 hours there. There's other people like to just use it as fast as they get it. I've tended to go, I want to build it up some. Part of the object of building it up was so that if I want to take off and do something, I've always got some extra there that I can go to do something. So if I get an opportunity to go on some real nice trip or do something else, that is possible. If I used it as fast as I got it every month, then I can't go off and do something bigger for a time or so. And I have done some bigger things along the way. And I've got some other things I'd like to do. However, with the amount of leave I've got there right now, between sick and annual, I figured out the other day I could take off the next 35 weeks on pay. Don't think they're going to let me do that.
That'd be a nice vacation.
Huh?
That'd be a nice vacation.
Mm-hmm. So, but sick leave is supposed to be used for when you're sick anyway. But I've got it. It's not built up to the max on it at all because I have used it sometimes along the way. The other part is they let us build up 720 hours of it. And like back there in 2003, I did use it for a number of weeks there, although I didn't use as much as I could have used. Because I was starting to teach online at that point, and when I couldn't drive for about 8 weeks, and I was 45 miles from school, I could still actually work from home. Now first a little bit, no, I couldn't hardly work from home, but because I couldn't concentrate long enough. It was weird. I could go work on the computer for 15 minutes and then I'd be just tired. Get up, go back, lay down on the bed, pick up a book, read it for 15 minutes, and I was tired. Get up from that, go back to the computer, work for 15 minutes, and then wear out again. But if I kept alternating stuff, I could keep doing stuff all day, but if you did anything for about 15 minutes, I'd tire out. But that's the way it goes. And then I gradually got better. But I was able to work on classes and stuff some, and they didn't make me take leave for when I was working. And then I've used some along the way for stuff, because I do have to go to the dentist every so often and so on. All right, any questions? Everybody got chapter 9 down now? 9 should not be real difficult for you as long as you can picture. The biggest things is picturing things we did today. Understand that 3-way handshake and then understand windowing. If you understand those two things, you should do fine on chapter 9. That's the two big things in that chapter. Okay? The rest of the stuff is just associated off that. In which case,